Greetings, superior beings, greetings, supreme being. We are all the human race. Our common enemy is death. Welcome on Try Something.Vegetarian. I'm ℙℝ𝔼ℍ𝖪. Today is the 8th of August, 8/8/2019. And you're watching the broadcast. Rouhani, lift sanctions first. Iran ready to talk. Once US sanctions lifted, asks UN to intervene. So one key thing I want to start off with is that, of course, to prevent mutually assured destruction, prevent the end and prevent the 7-year nuclear winter, prevent total self-annihilation, we have to prevent, stall, obstruct, sabotage, contain and end World War III and think about ways to do this. It's possible Jesuits are in control of the intelligence agencies, which are all Masonic according to Citizens Action Network, and their leader at the moment is Arturo Sosa. So these people are in control of leaders, supposedly, including Trump. So when I think about these sanctions, I have to turn something off here. Basically, one idea is that Americans, Trump, could propose lifting sanctions if Iran complies with some of these 12 points of Pompeo. What was the idea that I came up with? Anyway, let's look at what articles we're gonna cover. This is one, ℏ·jazeera.com, 13 hours ago. Iran's Rouhani to Trump lift sanctions first. It may be longer. It was yesterday, it was on Google News. The other one is Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Iran ready to talk once UN sanctions lifted, asks UN to intervene. rferl.org, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. And in the news we see this stuff, so basically I had thought out something, some kind of way, and I think not that it was not what I just said, so I have to think about it. Let's read these Google News articles first, these headlines about this topic.
Iran, U.S. must lift sanctions before we talk. Deutsche Welle, August 6, 2019. The Islamic Republic of Iran favors talks and negotiations, and, if the U.S. really wants to talk, before anything else it should lift all sanctions. Iran favors talks despite Trump's Netanyahu news. August 6, 2019. Iran's foreign minister sanctioned after declining Trump's chat invitation. The Guardian, August 5, 2019. Iran president, if U.S. wants talks, it must lift sanctions. ABC News, August 6, 2019. Rouhani says Iran favors talks but U.S. must lift sanctions. France 24, August 5, 2019. Iran's president says peace for peace, war for war. International Radio Farda, August 6, 2019.
I think what I had concocted was the idea that the US, Trump, could say, if you are ready to talk, we can lift some sanctions, basically. And Iran could also offer to meet some points of these 12 points of Pompeo. If the US is ready to come to the negotiation table. Of course, the UN will also have a key role in the ability to prevent world war, to be a mediator, to facilitate these talks, etc. But let's see what they have to say about this. It doesn't scroll up.
News. Iran's Rouhani to Trump. Lifts sanctions. First Iranian president denounces economic terrorism and doubts U.S. maximum pressure could bring about regime change. 13 hours ago, Iran considers the U.S. sanctions against Zarif a flagrant infringement of the principles of internal diplomatic law. Iran presidency/AFP. Iran considers the U.S. sanctions against Zarif a flagrant infringement of the principles of internal diplomatic law. Iran presidency/AFP. More on Middle East positive. Turkey says happy with U.S. talks on Syria safe zones today. Lebanese dam project stirs earthquake fears. Environment concerns today. West Bank activists surge cutting economic ties with Israel today. Iran's Rouhani to Trump. Lift sanctions first today. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has reiterated his stand that if U.S. President Donald Trump wants to start negotiations with Tehran, he must lift all sanctions against his country before everything else. Rouhani made the comments late on Tuesday during a meeting with Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, in which he reiterated that the U.S.'s sanctions on his country are an act of economic terrorism. During the meeting, Rouhani also said the Trump administration is mistaken to think that its maximum pressure campaign could bring about regime change in the country. Talk to Al Jazeera. Trump is on a collision course with himself, Robert Malley on U.S. policy in the Middle East. 25 hours 31 minutes. Tensions have escalated since Trump last year withdrew the United States from the 2015 nuclear deal.
So I think basically there has to be an incentive, so they have to come up with an idea. If you come and negotiate with us, then we uplift some of these sanctions. And basically preventing World War III is more important, so I think that it's very bad when there are no more talks. It's, how could that not lead to war, basically? Putin already made clear he disagrees with these sanctions, and I made clear several times that many people talk about Iran and also bombing, invading Iran. General Wesley Clark mentioned these 7 countries, and they're all invaded by soldiers except for Iran. And they talk about invading Iran, etc., and bombing Iran even preemptively, Bolton and others, without talking about the ally of Iran, Russia, Putin. But in reality, they may all be in on and controlled by the Jesuits to create a world war, in on creating a world war and population reduction to 500 million. Supposedly they control Iranian leaders via the Muslim Brotherhood, etc. So the idea is, how can we prevent this world war? That's the main thing, to control these factors that control aging in time. Total self-annihilation wouldn't help. And it's possible California would be wiped off the map by Putin's nuclear torpedoes that create these 90-meter high tidal waves. More about it on Twitter, on Never Again World War on Twitter. So it's twitter.com/neveragainwar. And of course on my channel on YouTube, try Something.Vegetarian. And I've covered developments, and I'll keep on covering the developments in Iran until the World War threat has disappeared or has been neutralized. So I covered Zarif chanting "Death to America, Israel and Britain" in my previous broadcasts. Was it this one? I think it's this one. I can even show the video just to refresh our memory. Death to America, death to Britain, death to Muslims who do not support, death to Israel. So this was also covered on Facebook. And the only thing is that I thought that Rouhani's lips, I don't know if they were congruent, in sync with what they were chanting basically, and that's kind of important when they're chanting that type of thing. But according to these people, and there are also YouTube videos of it, other YouTube videos, he was chanting that, so. And they were doing that long before the depleted uranium war crime in Iraq, Fallujah, etc.
Between Iran and world powers and imposed new, harsher sanctions on Iran's oil and banking sectors. Last week, the U.S. administration also announced financial sanctions on Zarif, after Trump last month imposed similar measures on Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. The sanctions are seen as part of a U.S. pressure campaign on Iran.
So Iran could change its mind. I've also downloaded some maps. I'll have to turn on the picture show to see if I can find them. Unified Command World Map, NWO Map Global Research. World with Commanders' Areas of Responsibility, based on Unified Command Plan, 17 December 2008. Yeah. I did that to resize the picture. So it shows that the whole world is basically divided in US Northcom, US Southcom, US Africom, Africa, US CENTCOM, US PACCOM, Australia, China, and US EUCOM, Russia and the EU. And if they've planned a global government and the US has spent more than all the other countries combined on a military-industrial complex, then I wonder if that includes the costs of the wars in the Middle East, 4.8 trillion, costofwar.com, and that meter is still going up, so you can check that out as well. Left sanctions, then we'll talk. Well, of course, I made that balloon myself. It's quite easy with paint.net, for example, freeware paint programs. Even with Windows Paint, you have these shapes that you can choose and then use the text thing to put a text on it with a font you like. So people can use Open Broadcaster software, this piece of software that I'm using, and you can make it look really professional, basically, by switching between these scenes. That's what I just did. So it can look much better than what I'm producing now. You can use shortcut keys to switch between them, but some browsers interfere with that, so that's not working too well. But that's a method, perhaps there are ways around it. So let's continue reading the ℏ𝒌Ⅎ.com article. So the idea was that they are not prepared to talk unless the US lifts their sanctions, which are also affecting Iran economically. And the thing is, Iran has already proposed allowing full inspections of these facilities if sanctions are dropped, basically. But Pompeo has made a list of 12 points Iran has to comply with if they want the sanctions to be removed or uplifted. So, like I said, they both have to put water in the wine, be prepared to negotiate and what's the word? Be able to make concessions to their demands and standpoints if they want to prevent a world war, which you could argue is more important. We don't need mutually assured destruction. If it would be a scalar world war, scalar weapons have made nuclear weapons obsolete, then none without a Tesla plasma shield would survive. And if it would just be nuclear, then it's possible none without a radiological water filter would survive. People need water daily, so you would need a radiological water filter and storable food. And I already talked about the possibility that it starts the 11th of August, a day called Tisha B'Av, Jewish Remembrance Day, holiday. According to Michael Drosnin's Bible codes interpretation that I've covered in my broadcast as well. So it's a Google book entitled The Purification Papers. So is this going to be a sort of cleansing of the whole world, annihilation of 7 billion people, to reduce the global population to 500 million? It's their dream, basically. Lots of people have spoken out about how they think the world is overpopulated, which is disproven by me in my previous broadcasts, and by others as well. So it's a lie that the world is overpopulated, used by them as an argument for population reduction, which they may call population control. The Jesuits and Masons are doing this. The Rothschilds are the bankers of the Vatican, basically. Rothschilds, Rockefellers, whatever. That's what I read online. But Mr. Rothschild and others are also members of Bilderberg and other groups that are involved in this nefarious illegal population reduction with, for example, killer vaccines. The list of pandemics caused by vaccinations makes that clear. So they cause these pandemics instead of prevent them with the killer vaccines that may also contain mercury, an ingredient that makes your brain disappear literally. It causes brain neuron degeneration. So that's the first thing they want to do, dumb down the global population. But it's not to enslave them and use them as slaves, but to reduce the global population to a more controllable number. And polarization is another thing they are trying to bring about, not prevent, making the rich richer and the poor poorer. That's polarization. And they benefit from that. So the idea is that they then have enough money to survive, but the rest of the populace will not have the money to survive, nor the means to survive. I'm feeling cancer self on radiation. It's a sort of artificial fear. It's very annoying. So I will ask my father to turn off his cancer cell phone. And I think I will do that now. Let's see if there's anything in the chat. If you write something in the chat, it will appear on the screen. And I'll be right back. So I'm not going to continue reading the article until I'm back. Just checking if my father's cancer cell phone is in airplane mode. In cancer cell phone radiation, microwaves cause lumping red blood cells, which is a test you can do at home, a reproducible test. And some people lie, also scientists, and media, mainstream media, and Wikipedia, to reduce the global population. The violation of the genocide convention. I argue. Now going downstairs. So yeah, I'm electro and chemically sensitive. And I had to explain to my father that he first has to log in, basically, past the lock screen, to be able to turn it into airplane mode. So I'm back, and I'm packing my pipe. So now we can continue the reading. So this way people can fast forward. I use this technique quite regularly if I have to get juice or tea. Then I just put it in airplane mode low. Then I turn on the picture show, and then I turn off that picture show when I get back to show that the broadcast continues. So when people fast forward, then they can see that the broadcast continues now with the reading of the ℚ𝓼ℸ𝑗azira.com article.
The New Yorker magazine has reported that before imposing sanctions against Zarif, Trump had offered to hold a meeting with him at the White House, a proposal that Tehran brushed aside as a mere photo op lacking in substance. Iran's UN ambassador, ℚ𝓼℘𝓯𝓯𝓙, sent a letter on Tuesday to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres protesting what he called the illegal sanctions on Zarif. ℷ𝓵 said they are part of U.S. policy waging economic terrorism against the Iranian people and bringing pressure to bear on their representatives. Infringement of diplomatic law. Iran considers the sanctions a flagrant infringement of the fundamental principles of diplomatic law that contravenes the privileges and immunities of UN diplomats and the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, he said. U.S. imposes sanctions on Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif. 228. The ambassador added that the sanctions indicate the U.S. regime despises diplomacy, and that its action sets a dangerous precedent. It is imperative for the international community to condemn the United States' unlawful behavior, and stand firm in defending the established principles of international law, ℷ𝓵 said. Meanwhile, Iran's defense ministry launched on Tuesday a new set of smart and precision-guided bombs developed by local weapons experts. Defense Minister Brigadier General Amir Hatami said the homegrown smart bombs could hit a target from a distance of 50 kilometers. Iran has been stepping up its defense capabilities amid heightened tensions in the region and threats from the U.S. and its Middle Eastern allies, including Israel and Saudi Arabia, source, Al Jazeera and news agencies.
Well, the idea that they have planned a world war is rather insane, of course. Mutually assured destruction wouldn't be in anyone's benefit, like I've explained. 7-year nuclear winter, none without a Tesla plasma shield would survive. And it's even possible they have the Tesla doomsday weapon that can split the Earth in two. And the vegetarian Nikola Tesla made clear his invention was to end all wars, unquote. So if they're not prepared to talk, perhaps they could change their mind and say, we're prepared to talk if the US promises to lift certain sanctions. You could see it like, if they don't want to talk, if they refrain from talks unless the sanctions are lifted, that would surely produce World War III, and if they would talk, then it's possible that they would come out better, that they would survive the situation. So I have to think about it further, and also about the question what supposed illegal things the US would have done, what international and other laws are applicable to these sanctions, what has Iran done, has it done anything illegal that justifies these sanctions? Putin doesn't think so. And that's the ally of Iran, Russia. So what the UN thinks doesn't really matter, you could argue, except that they might be able to negotiate with the US about lifting up the sanctions. I could take another look at these 12 points of Pompeo, but if Iran is not prepared to negotiate unless sanctions are lifted, and the US is not prepared to lift sanctions, then this will keep on being an issue, also in the mainstream media, and it could possibly escalate into a world war. So I hope that both sides take action to prevent, stall, obstruct, sabotage, contain, and end World War III.
Iran ready to talk once U.S. sanctions lifted, asks UN to intervene August 7, 2019 1:12 GMT.
So this is the Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty referral.org article.
Updated August 7, 2019 1:31 GMT by RFE/RL. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, center-right, walks with Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, left. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, center-right, walks with Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif.
It's interesting that they all have these shirts that have this type of color, basically. And I don't know what it smells like, but I bet they're in an oud cloud.
Left, share, print. Iran on August 6 asked the UN to push back on U.S. sanctions, and the Islamic Republic's President Hassan Rouhani said restrictive measures must be lifted first before negotiations can start about the country's nuclear program. Tension between the two countries stems from last year when U.S. President Donald Trump withdrew from a 2015 nuclear deal between Tehran and world powers and imposed new and harsher sanctions on Iran's oil and financial sectors. Iranian state TV showed Rouhani meeting with Foreign Minister Mohammad Zarif, who both are on a U.S. sanctions list, while reiterating that the restrictive measures are an act of economic terrorism. Meanwhile, Iran's UN ambassador, ℚ sent a letter of protest to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres urging him to play your active role in preserving the integrity of the United Nations in line with your responsibility to counter the current dangerous trend. It is not clear how Guterres can act on response, and UN spokesman Staffan Dujarric declined to comment on the letter. Trump has said publicly several times that he is willing to hold talks with the Iranians even as he implements his campaign of maximum pressure. Iran recently threatened to block all energy exports out of the Strait of Hormuz, through which a fifth of global oil passes, if it's unable to sell oil as promised under the 2015 deal, which lifted nuclear-related sanctions as long as Iran's nuclear activities remained peaceful in nature. U.S. Energy Secretary Rick Perry said on August 6 that the United States and Saudi Arabia had agreed to counter Iran's attempts to destabilize the global oil market, according to a readout of his meeting with Saudi Minister of Energy, Industry.
So the BDS movement wants to boycott Israel, but I think it's better to boycott companies specifically, only companies that are having a negative influence on our timeline, for example, Monsanto companies, or McDonald's cutting rainforests by baking pancakes in front of McDonald's. Of course, I have denounced all attacks on innocent civilians, whether they're done by military, by terrorists, or by other people. All attacks on innocent civilians are denounced by me, not condemned. It's associated with religion, denounced. It's making clear you disagree with it, and that is because I think it's a cowardly act to attack unarmed innocent civilians, whether they're in prayer houses, regardless of their religious preference, their sexual preference, and whether they're Jews or non-Jews. Because then you're lowering yourself to their level. And if you're a believer, of course, then your soul would end up in ℘𝓮𝓯, hell. It's Arabic and also Hebrew for hell, ℘𝓮𝓯. And they, however, are programmed to think that the opposite is true, that they'll end up in paradise with these virgins if they self-detonate. So religion is an abomination, and that's because religion is an illusion based on the lie that there's something higher than the humans, making the humans mere humans. So some think religions were just concocted by Satanists to play everybody out against each other in their legal wars, etc. And this has been going on for centuries. Also some talk about a Jesuit Holocaust. ℓ𝔬𝑘𝑙𝐆. Let's switch to another. Boris Johnson prevents Ⅎ𝑚 in World War III, shaking hands with Mr. Lord Rothschild. So I'm thinking about this, they won't negotiate, and what's the situation? Well, the 12 points of Pompeo, let's Google it first. And let's first read the rest of the article, I don't want to interrupt too long.
And Mineral Resources ℘𝐼 now Tehran said it no longer feels bound to comply with the nuclear deal. Iran this week said it had increased its stockpile of heavy water beyond the 130-ton limit, according to Behrouz Kamalvandi, a spokesman for the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran. Tehran also exceeded the maximum reserve of 300 kilograms of low-enriched uranium. With reporting by Reuters and AP.
So that was the whole Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty article. They could also change it into Radio Liberty Europe. And that was the article, Iran ready to talk once US sanctions lifted, asks UN to intervene. Iran's UN ambassador Majid Ravanchi sent a letter of protest to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, urging him to, quote, play your active role in preserving the integrity of the United Nations in line with your responsibility to counter the current dangerous trend. It is not clear how Guterres can act in response, and UN spokesman Stéphane Dujarric declined to comment on the letter. So if they would block the Strait of Hormuz, then the question is, what would happen then? Basically, it's not a problem. There's enough cancer oil in the rest of the world. So I would, at this point, urge everybody not to overreact and to take steps towards peace instead of towards possible world war, which is what some people may have planned, and even then we could wonder how to prevent it, wonder about how to prevent it, because there are infinite ways to prevent it, because everything is energy, so everything is possible. And that's still the best option. So people could go to a safe country, the 11th of August, or take their chances, stay at home. Okay, so those were the two articles, and then I can move to Mike Pompeo's speech. What are the 12 demands given to Iran? I already went through those. So on ℘.gov we read August 6, 2019, Michael Pompeo, Trump administration pressure is weakening Iran's regime. Well, I doubt that isn't it hitting the consumers, the citizens, harder than their regime when the cancer oil transport is stopped and Iran has sanctions with economic and other sanctions. They're sanctioning a whole country, so you could argue they're boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning Iran, basically. Oh yeah, I wanted to read these things on the side articles. First for the Al Jazeera article, more on Middle East from Al Jazeera. Some more headlines.
More on Middle East positive. Turkey says happy with U.S. talks on Syria safe zones today. Lebanese dam project stirs earthquake fears. Environment concerns today. West Bank activists surge cutting economic ties with Israel today. Iran's Rouhani to Trump, lift sanctions first today. Ⅎ.referral.org. Related: Britain joining US in Maritime Security Mission in Gulf. Britain joining US in Maritime Security Mission in Gulf. Iran says it will veer more from nuke deal if Europeans don't help. Iran says it will veer more from nuke deal if Europeans don't help. Rouhani says war with Iran the mother of all wars. Rouhani says war with Iran the mother of all wars. Michael Pompeo, Trump administration pressure is weakening Iran's regime. Op-ed, Michael R. Pompeo, Secretary of State, USA Today, August 6, 2019, shared the Trump administration has implemented an unprecedented pressure campaign on Iran's leaders with two objectives. First, to deprive the Iranian regime of the money it needs to support its destabilizing activities. Second, to force the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei to the negotiating table to conclude a comprehensive and enduring deal. The comprehensive deal we seek with the Iranian regime should address four key areas: its nuclear program, its ballistic missile development and proliferation, its support for terrorist groups and proxies, and its treatment and illegal detention of U.S. citizens. Before we reimposed sanctions and accelerated our pressure campaign, Iran was increasing its malign activity, even under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. These actions included expansive missile testing and proliferation, continuing to unjustly detain American citizens, and deepening its involvement in regional conflicts. In Yemen, Iran has provided funding, weapons and training to the Houthis, only prolonging the conflict and suffering of the Yemeni people. In Syria, Iran supports a regime that has killed hundreds of thousands, has displaced millions of its own citizens, and continues to spread violence throughout the country. In Lebanon, Iran uses Hezbollah to provoke conflict with Lebanon's neighbors, imperil the Lebanese people and generate instability. U.S. pressure is reversing these trends. The regime and its proxies are weaker than when our pressure began. Iranian-backed militias have stated that Iran no longer has enough money to pay them as much as in the past and has enacted austerity plans. Iran's proposed military budget for 2019 included a 28% cut to its defense budget and a 17% cut to its terror branch, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. As we raise the cost of Iran's expansionism and the status quo, we seek a comprehensive deal and a far more peaceful, stable relationship. We look forward to the day we can help bring the Iranian people and their neighbors the peace and prosperity they deserve.
Okay, back to the 12 points. I thought about terrorist activities. Well, if they've invaded these countries, Iraq, etc., would it be a crime for these people to defend themselves against the invaders? And if there are over 1 million dead innocent civilians, then who's the bad guy, basically? So they also have to keep Putin in mind and the world war threat if they would attack Iran. Or if Iran would attack one of their vessels or whatever. And Trump already said he would obliterate that part of Iran, basically. And if Putin made clear he disagrees with the sanctions, so that means that Putin could strike the US if they do that, basically. And then these Poseidon nukes, nuclear torpedoes, would create 90-meter high tidal waves. I don't know if that's about the height of the waves they would produce. Perhaps it's even higher. The Burj Khalifa is almost a kilometer in height, so 90-meter high tsunami waves. I could Google average skyscraper size. The Imperial Standards Committee defines a high-rise building as a multi-story structure between 35 to 100 meters tall, or a building of unknown height from 12 to 39 floors, and a skyscraper as a multi-story building whose architectural height is at least 100 meters or 330 feet. Well, the buildings on the right on that picture may be skyscrapers. The buildings that are swept away are not skyscrapers. Those are high-rise or multi-story structure. They're high-rise buildings. So a multi-story structure is 35 to 100 meters tall, and a skyscraper, everything over 100 meters. Alright, well, that's interesting that then we've learned something new. Or at least I have. If I can remember it all. So I'm for preventing that world war. Just the US saying, okay, we'll uplift these sanctions, but you gotta comply with some points. And I've indicated in my previous broadcast which of these 12 points of Pompeo I disagree with. But okay, we can read this again. On Al Jazeera, for example.
News. United States Mike Pompeo speech. What are the 12 demands given to Iran? U.S. Secretary of State threatens Iran with the strongest sanctions in history if the conditions are not met. May 21, 2018. An International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, inspector at the Natanz facility in January 2014, 𝓍𝓼, the Associated Press/IRNA, an International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, inspector at the Natanz facility in January 2014, 𝓍𝓼, the Associated Press/IRNA. More on US and Canada divided under Trump. The strange death of American civility today. Hundreds arrested in largest US immigration raids in a decade.
It basically reminds me of these movies where you have these burglars that have to get past these lasers to get to whatever it is they want to steal. And this kind of reminded me of it.
Today do something. Protest as Trump visits mass shooting victims today. Justice Secretary Wanda Vasquez sworn in as Puerto Rico governor today. The U.S. Secretary of State has set out 12 tough demands for inclusion in a new nuclear treaty with Iran. The conditions, listed by Mike Pompeo during a speech at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C., on Monday, will require Iran, in his words, to declare to the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, a full account of the prior military dimensions of its nuclear program and permanently and verifiably abandon such work in perpetuity, stop enrichment and never pursue plutonium reprocessing, including closing its heavy water reactor, provide the IAEA with unqualified access to all sites throughout the entire country, end its proliferation of ballistic missiles and halt further launching or development of nuclear-capable missile systems, release all U.S. citizens as well as citizens of U.S. partners and allies, in support to Middle East terrorist groups, including Hezbollah, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, respect the sovereignty of the Iraqi government and permit the disarming, demobilization and reintegration of Shia militias, end its military support for the Houthi rebels and work towards a peaceful, political settlement in Yemen, withdraw all forces under Iran's command throughout the entirety of Syria, end support for the Taliban and other terrorists in Afghanistan and the region and cease harboring senior al-Qaeda leaders, end the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps linked Quds forces support for terrorists and militant partners around the world, end its threatening behavior against its neighbors, many of whom are U.S. allies, including its threats to destroy Israel and its firing of missiles at Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, and threats to international shipping and destructive cyber attacks.
Wow, so those were 12 points. I don't remember any of them. Declare to the IAEA a full account of the prior military dimensions of its nuclear program, and permanently and verifiably abandon such work in perpetuity. The military dimensions, well, I agree with that. If they're allowing full inspections, then they might as well show them all the things they've done in the direction of creating a nuclear weapon. Stop enrichment and never pursue plutonium reprocessing, including closing its heavy water reactor. Basically, I disagree with that one. If they allow full inspection, so they have an overview of how much and to what extent and what type of plutonium or uranium they're enriching. If all that is known, then they can produce a nuclear bomb. It cannot be abused, it cannot be dumped on the sea bottom, etc. So then there is no good argument to stop them from enriching and to never make them pursue plutonium reprocessing, including closing its heavy water reactor. If safety standards are met, basically, they wouldn't be in violation of the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty nor the JCPOA in any way. So there is no reason they should not be allowed to do that when there are full inspections. Provide the IAEA with unqualified access to all sites throughout the entire country. Yes, I think that's a must, because otherwise if they would keep parts hidden, they could produce it nuclear, and then the whole plan is flawed and useless. And they've already claimed they allow full inspections if sanctions are lifted, end its proliferation of ballistic missiles, and halt further launching or development of nuclear-capable missile systems. No, if they're used for other types of payloads, then there should not be any reason for that. So I disagree with that point as well. They should be allowed to make these missiles for other payloads other than nuclear payloads. And if they allow full inspections, then it's impossible for them to produce a nuclear warhead. And they just have 300 kilograms, though they need 1200 kilograms to produce just one nuke. So And they had that in May, so perhaps now they have 350 or whatever kilograms. So they don't even have one nuke, and Russia has over 6,000 nukes, and that's an ally of Iran. Why they are an ally of Iran is another matter. I could check it out. But it seems to me like a setup to produce World War III, basically. And its proliferation of ballistic missiles, we already covered that. No. No. Release all US citizens as well as citizens of US partners and allies. Well, I say no, that these demands are unreasonable, but if they want to prevent a world war and total annihilation of Iran and all countries of the world to impose their satanic Luciferian totalitarian global government, then I think they'd better come up with something. Release all US citizens as well as citizens of US partners and allies. Well, they could make the precondition that they have to be brought to justice for their crimes, so they can't just be released without proper punishment. And if they are spies, etc., then the US would also see that as a serious crime, so they can't just go release murderers and torturers and criminals unless they are taken care of in the US. If they get proper punishment, etc., then I think that would be a reasonable demand. But that's just what I think. Apparently they think these demands, all 12 of them, have to be met. And it's questionable whether Iran would comply with this. Though that would be my advice to Iran and to the US, to just lift these sanctions to prevent World War III, and then use other methods to make them comply with all these points. And support to Middle East, quote, terrorists and quote groups, including Hezbollah, Hamas, and Islamic Jihad. I think some of them may be governmental or, associated with the government, so I don't know if they themselves consider them terrorist groups as well. So if, but okay, they chanted death to America, etc. You don't see Trump chanting death to Iran, etc. They do it silently. I would agree with it if these are really terrorist groups that may also have endangered Iranian citizens or are a threat within their country. Perhaps the US could help to bring them to justice. But when I hear Trump about killing the families of these terrorists, then I have my doubts if that's gonna happen. Respect the sovereignty of the Iraqi government and permit the disarming, demobilization and reintegration of Shia militias. I'd have to think about that one. Then I'd first have to know what Shia militias are, I guess. I'm for everything that leads to more safety for the civilians and more liberty, more freedom. And I'm not necessarily for something that increases liberty and freedom at the cost of safety or for more safety at the cost of liberty and freedom, basically. So we can look at what we have now and then how to improve that. And then just implement it, just do it. If we can control the outcome and it's certain that it would be better than what we have now, then you could waste taxpayer dollars on that. So I'm for whatever is best for the people, controlling all factors that control aging, preventing world war. Never again world war, that's my Twitter. So that's important, we don't need world war. It would not be in anyone's benefit with all the weapons of self-destruction surrounding us. Nuclear, biological, chemical, and of course radiation weapons, scalar weapons, 15 scalar weapon countries, according to former Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden. So I think that's not some conspiracy wacko or conspiracy theorist. I think he's fully in contact with reality, and that these scalar weapons are definitely real, proven to myself by the fact that the dental torture beam, they used pulsed energy predictable mode, was partially deflected by my grounded Ⅎ𝕷 generator onto other body parts. So that's not the scalar wave that was deflected, but the electromagnetic field they generated by crossing these two scalar waves. And they can generate several types of electromagnetic fields, and it happens to be a mobile crowd dispersal weapon. So it's a car that can beam in pulsed energy predictable mode, and that induces the maximum amount of pain by stimulating the nerves directly. So that's really hurting people. And they also have active denial system mode, ADS, and that's used to burn people's skin. And they use that a lot on me. They used to do that a lot to me. They used it a lot on me. Excuse me. So basically they attack people's genitalia, and they used that on me until my skin was coming off, literally, basically, really burned. Also extremely painful. If ℏ𝕗ℎ𝕗℔ demolition of the WTC has anything to do with it, according to ℏ𝕗ℎ𝕗℔, he ordered the demolition of the WTC, and he was the leader of the Jesuits at that time, also known as the Society of the Perfect and the Society of Jesus. They call themselves by these names as well. So, picking my pipe, a very nice one. This is Stanwell. I bought it used on eBay, and it feels like quality. It's also a pleasure to smoke this thing. So if the Iraqi government is criminal, terroristic, and these Shias are trying to defend the civilians, I doubt this, but okay, if that would be the case, then I would be against disarming the Shia militias if they're the only thing standing in between the civilians and criminal government that's in on population reduction and creating world war, etc. But I doubt this sincerely, so this is highly theoretical, of course. We can Google Shia militias to find out what they are. Private militias in Iraq. The term militia in contemporary Iraq refers to armed groups that fight on behalf of or as part of the Iraqi government, the Mahdi army and Badr organization being two of the biggest. Israel had Shia militias in hidden war with Iran 19 hours ago, The Times. A malevolent Iran hurt US friends in Iraq, Wall Street Journal 1 day ago. So basically they are Iraqi army. Well, the UN would have to decide if this is an unreasonable demand or not. I don't know enough about it yet. I could think a little bit longer. So, respecting the sovereignty of the Iraqi government, you could argue if it's a tyrannical government, etc., then it would be an unreasonable demand. And permit the disarming, demobilization, and reintegration of Shia militias. Another trick is, of course, they could say they agree with all these points, but then not do what they supposedly agreed upon, and they can claim it was just to prevent World War III, basically. And it's so basically that's my critique on that point, and I can't say about this one if I agree or disagree with it. But Iran could say that they agree with that point because it's an Iraqi matter, basically. So you could also see it like it's about saving the maximum number of Iranian civilians, Iraqi civilians, from these Americans that might even be trying to provoke a world war instead of prevent one. And its military support for the Houthi rebels and work towards a peaceful political settlement in Yemen. So about this previous one, basically, I'm for demilitarization, so you could argue, yes, I agree with both of these points. Also, if you would see the US as the 𝓲𝓽, it's just waiting for an excuse to strike innocent civilians again. Totally comply with the demands and take it from there, then the world war threat is avoided, and they don't expect that at all. And its military support for the Houthi rebels and work towards a peaceful political settlement in Yemen. Then I'd have to Google Houthi rebels. Not Houthi, but Houthi. Houthi rebellion conflict was a military rebellion pitting Zaida Shia Houthis against the Yemen military that began in northern Yemen and has since escalated into a full-scale civil war. Yemen separatists stormed presidential palace in Aden, Wall Street Journal 12 hours ago. Well, politically they can say one thing and do another, basically. You could argue that's not right either, two wrongs don't make a right. But it's all to save the maximum number of human lives. Based on ℘𝑗 nefesh, that's the Judaistic slogan. You may break any commandment to save human life except 3 cardinal sins. Idolatry, murder, and sexual crimes are not permitted, not even to save human life. I would argue they are but not always. So sometimes you may not murder, but you may execute people, murderers that have shot 20 people already, and then if you're the only one that carries, then you could shoot them at least in the leg or whatever. But that's also that story about the disco shootings. If somebody would have carried a gun, then they could have taken out the disco shooter. Anyway, you could argue from an ethical point of view, if these governments are corrupt, then the rebels are doing the right thing, resisting their tyrannical governments. And then these demands would be unreasonable, you could argue. So in the light of international law, would this be legit? Would these demands be legit? Or is it comparable to a terrorist that extorts people with a gun to their head, says, you have to do this and this and this, do you comply? Withdrawal of forces under Iran's command throughout the entirety of Syria. I'm for preventing World War III, that's all I know, for creating universal peace, that it would be horrific and some would call it the end of days, etc. And it wouldn't be fun for anyone for the next decade. So I hope both Iran and the US come up with proposals and the UN helps to intervene to prevent further escalation of the Iran situation. As a matter of fact, you could argue there's nothing going on, except that Iran is sanctioned and Putin disagrees with this as well. Okay. Withdraw all forces under Iran's command throughout the entirety of Syria. Well, another point is that you could see it as imperialism, that they're invading other nations. So all these soldiers, including the American soldiers, have to go back to their home country. All they can do is kill people, basically. Well, you could argue it's stupid to say that. Of course, they can prevent a world war and have the rules, basically. Prevent a world war and create universal peace. Do whatever is necessary. And support for the Taliban and other, quote, terrorists in Afghanistan and the region. And cease harboring senior Al-Qaeda leaders. Well, it fits in with the idea that all these soldiers would go home, including terrorists, leaders, etc., and celebrate peace and they're being civilized. Civilization itself is worth a celebration. Play some Lionel Richie or whatever. What a feeling, dancing on the ceiling. And of course, what was the other one? All Night Long. That also gives a good feeling. Almost 4 minutes long. And support for the Taliban and other terrorists in Afghanistan and the region, and cease harboring senior Al-Qaeda leaders. Again, they can just say, okay, of course, say one thing and do another. I mean, by way of deception thou shalt do war, the former Mossad slogan. That's, perhaps there's something in the Quran like that as well, taqiyya or whatever. And the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps linked Quds forces support for terrorists and militant partners around the world. Yeah, in reality I'm for that as well, against any attacks on innocent civilians. And basically, I've made it clear, don't do it to innocent civilians, but those who killed millions, whose policies killed millions, real murderers and not innocent people, because then you're helping the pedo elite. That's what they want us to do, to reduce the global population. They want everyone to die except for their own group, their own pathetic secret society that has to hide and do everything in secret and whisper, etc., behind people's back, scamming and hoaxing, poisoning, terrorizing and tyrannizing the people into submission. And its threatening behavior against its neighbors, many of whom are US allies, including its threats to destroy Israel and its firing of missiles at Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, and threats to international shipping and destructive cyber attacks. Well, yeah, I think that would be the right thing to do for a leader. To revoke their vow to destroy Israel. The US, don't know about Britain. Okay, Britain as well then. Yeah, that would be peaceful. I think that would be reaching out. If they do that now, then lots of people will say Iran are the good guys. They allow full inspections. They have taken back their threat to destroy their death to Iran, US, Britain threat. And they could apologize also. And say that they're ready for universal peace or world peace or just peace instead of war. And perhaps there's stuff in the Quran, in the Bible for religious people. When you enter another country, you first have to give them your demands for peace. I don't want peace, no. Give me incense and stuff. Take me to your harem. I have taken over for universal peace, so it's okay. Let's first smoke a peace pipe. Let's do this first. Houthi rebels. Israel held Shia militias in hidden war with Iran. But we reported about it, so it's not totally hidden then. The Times ℘𝑘𝑙𝑆 with the MI6 motto, Semper Occultus, keep everything secret. Israel wants to stop Iranian militias from getting too close to its backyard, and it's targeting them in Iraq, Richard Spencer writes. I wonder if there's a YouTube video of this Shia fighters. WTF.
The followers of Zainab Brigade, ℘𝐿𝑖 is a pro-government brigade fighting in Syria composed of Shia Pakistanis. It draws recruits from Shia Pakistanis living in Iran, Shia Hazara living in Pakistan, and native Shia of ℚ and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Exclusive, on the front line with Shiite militias in Iraq. 23,548 views. 143. 17. France 24 English published on Jan 19, 2018.
Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters Plus here on France 24. I'm Mark Owen. In this special edition, we take you into the heat of the battle against the Islamic State group. Our team was alongside the Shia militia in the last stages of the fight to defeat the jihadists in Iraq, a victory that scarcely hid another urgent issue. What happens now to these Shia factions? Back.
The column is an elite battalion of Shiite paramilitary forces.
The bridge, the right bank, they've been mined. We'll have to work around it. We can't take any risks. If we have to hold the convoy up, then so be it.
These militiamen are the vanguard. Their job, to open up the way and mop up the last pockets of jihadist resistance. A bridge that's been cut off. Suspect movements. It quickly turns into a confrontation in the middle of the desert.
They ran away over there. It was over in just a few seconds. If we hadn't been delayed, we could have rounded up all that scum.
We're here to serve Imam Hussein.
It's a fight against an unseen enemy that has disappeared over the border into Syria. The column continues its advance, kilometer by kilometer.
Victory is ours by the will of God. May God punish ISIS in the name of the Prophet Muhammad.
It reminds me of Stargate, basically. It's also a computer game, a video game.
We Iraqis will not stop until ISIS has been exterminated. We'll hunt them down wherever they are.
We can take a look at the live broadcast going on this time. At this time. Nothing much going on. Al Jazeera live, United Nations live 6 watching. This stream reminds me of the chat messages. Probably no one watching this live. So that's good, and people can fast forward. I'm gonna get some more juice. I love smoothies. Patriot News, watch the news. Live now. Let's see what's going on.
But that achievement would still depend on which launch complexes the vehicles were launched from and what range resources would need. Okay, this is the final section, and it's called Starliner Test Launch. This is the final Atlas V launch before Boeing and ULA, I don't know who ULA are, begin launching the Starliner capsule for NASA's Commercial Crew Program. The space agency plans to use Starliner as well as SpaceX's Crew Dragon capsule to start taking astronauts to and from the International Space Station sometime this year or next year. The Starliner spacecraft, similar in shape to the capsules used during the Apollo era, is designed to carry up to 7 astronauts, with additional cargo also possible if fewer astronauts fly on a particular mission.
So, of course, it may be totally fake. NASA, Masons faking everything. Like the Apollo moon landings. Those are totally fake. So I'm gonna get some more pineapple and orange juice in this lovely glass I bought recently. I like the tropical stuff, basically. That's nice. Green tea. I still have tea. Oh, not much tea either. Well, I'm gonna have to get tea as well. It might take a while. Which took place in March of this year. And the final paragraph is... So I can leave this on for a while. I don't know what ULA stands for. And I can listen to it from the kitchen if I keep the door open. I make it loud enough. And when I get back, then I can turn on the picture show or whatever. Atop a Ⅎ4 rocket on August 22
at 9 a.m. And this was written by Amy Thompson. Thank you, Amy.
Good morning, guys. That was a spectacular launch. I see Hillbilly put up a good picture too. Must be there in the area as well. I live just south and east of, south and east. I just along the east coast, south of the Cape. And so we see most blast-offs whenever they go. It was wonderful because it was just before dawn, air just about at dawn, just before the sun came up. So you can see it longer as it goes up. And with this new booster that they use, it comes down and actually lands on a ship just offshore out there. And this morning, that was what the bright one was. And the one that Hillbilly has, that also has to do with that one coming down. We could watch it come almost all the way down, and then it lands on a ship. Anyway, it's pretty cool. There are some videos attached to that article, so if anyone wants to watch them, they show a lot of technical stuff and that on there. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Honest Grandma, that was a hell of a find. Space exploration is the most exciting thing humanity has ever done.
Well, I actually forgot about it this morning. I knew it was coming, but I'd forgotten about it. Went out for my walk at 6, and I got to my friend's house that walks with me, and she said, "Look up, there's one going up." So we got to stand there in the street and watch it go up.
That's beautiful. I'm so jealous.
And then we have this article that was just above it, dumpster, from Sarah A. Cotter, the top FBI department deputy assistant director who leaked to the media, revealed.
You want me to roll with this one, Justice?
Sure.
You got it. Okay, just a minute. I'm dealing with Pop.
You just go when you're ready.
Okay, this outfit is actually called Sarah, S-A-R-A. And it's by Sarah Carter. And it's from my yesterday. And I think it's your yesterday as well if you're living in New York. But I'm not 100% of my time zones. But it's a fresh article. And the banner is top FBI Deputy Assistant Director who leaked to media revealed. Department of Justice declined prosecution. Okay, so this goes into the nefarious dealings. Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz released a harsh summary report in May, revealing that an FBI Deputy Assistant Director had numerous unauthorized contacts with the accepted gifts from journalists, and disclosed the existence of sensitive information under court seal to the media. So Horowitz is on the job. Horowitz is actually finding out who leaked and who was paid and the corruption and so forth. Anyway, I will continue. Several officials concerned to sarahcarter.com, that's sarahcarter.com. No, hang on. Let me get this straight. SarahACarter.com. This week that the unknown senior FBI official is Brian Parman. Parman, who began his career with the Bureau in 1996, was shuffled by FBI Director Christopher Wray in August 2017 from his position as FBI Deputy Assistant Director of the International Operations Division to Special Agent in charge of the Counterterrorism Division for the New York field office. He is currently on leave and his security clearance has been suspended, sources say. So Parman has been suspended. He was made FBI Deputy Assistant Director of International Operations Division in 2017, and then he was moved to Counterterrorism Division for the New York field office. That's what that paragraph says. I will continue. Horowitz did not name Parman in the investigative summary released in May, but instead referred to him as a Deputy Assistant Director. Okay. Horowitz's investigation focused on the time Parman was working at the FBI's Washington, D.C. headquarters as the Deputy Assistant Director of the International Operations Division. Horowitz stated in his summary that the Department of Justice declined to prosecute. A senior DOJ official confirmed that the decision by the Department of Justice to decline prosecution was made before William Barr was Attorney General. Okay, so we're looking at the machinations of the past and why they're becoming relevant now. Parman could not be reached for comment. FBI officials declined comment. The next banner says, Judicial Watch documents show 14 referrals of FBI employees to OPR for leaking. OPR stands for, let me find it, Office of Professional Responsibility. So Judicial Watch documents show 14 referrals of FBI employees to the Office of Professional Responsibility. But I will continue. The information comes on the heels of records of...
So basically he's reviewing the news. It's quite boring. I think that everything about... fruit juice. I can do a picture show about Mueller, etc. That all that is boring, and it may be some kind of psyop to hide other things. For example, the long list of women that have filed charges against Trump.
Admitted to linking these documents to a friend. Okay, that's treason. The documents were leaked with the purpose of giving the information to the New York Times to push for a special counsel investigation into Trump, Comey had told Congress. That's an act of sedition. The IG report focusing on Comey could be released any time, and federal law enforcement officials are anticipating more bad news, as Horowitz's investigators are preparing another report on the origins of the FBI's probe into President Trump's campaign and Russia. So the Russia thing isn't done yet. Trump gets his turn to play. But I will continue. Alongside Horowitz, Connecticut U.S. Attorney John Durham has been tasked by Barr to fully investigate the Bureau's handling of the Trump-Russia investigation. I would say that the decision made by the DOJ to not pursue prosecution of Parman is reflecting of DOJ's current MO, that's modus operandi, of sweeping things under the rug to prevent further discredit being brought onto the FBI, said a former FBI official with knowledge of Parman's situation. This dismissal is an affront to all other leaking cases that have been prosecuted. Horowitz May summary report. Horowitz's investigation concluded that Parman engaged in misconduct when he was the Deputy Assistant Director of International Operations Division. 1. Disclosed to the media the existence of information that had been filed under seal in federal court in violation of 18 U.S.C. space 401 contempt of court. And 2. Provided without authorization, FBI law enforcement sensitive information to reporters on multiple occasions. And 3. Had dozens of official contacts with the media without authorization in violation of FBI policy. So the guy is dirty, basically. That's what it says. Parman, who has been suspended, is as dirty as they get. The Office of Inspector General also found that the DAD, I don't know what DAD stands for, engaged in misconduct when the DAD accepted a ticket valued at approximately $225 to to attend a media-sponsored dinner as a gift from a member of the media, in violation of federal regulations and FBI policy, according to the report. As for Parman, Horowitz's investigators found that he had numerous contacts with members of the media in violation of FBI policy. Additionally, it was alleged that the DAD may have disclosed for enforcement or other sensitive information to the media without authorization.
So I wonder if they control the position, they're not real patriots. They're more or less for that global government, for getting rid of the US and a world war to build a third temple in Jerusalem. Or is that total nonsense? Well, you could ask them in the chat. I found the part that I was looking for.
Are all these Donald Trump messages involving rape to cover up who is the real rapist? Donald Trump accuses China of trade rape. YouTube. Most Mexicans are not rapists and most Americans are not rapists either, Mr. Trump. Choose a form of government first. The people we read about in history books did not invest in nor control all factors that control aging. Make up your own mind. Iran. May then. Iran may then. Cancer. Cell phone radiation also causes DNA breaks, chromosomal damage and tumors on the side where people kept their cancer cell phones against their heads as shown on the MRI scan. Self-hypnosis may also help. My second ℏ𝕻 creation after Ⅎ𝕻 1 small drop of ℏ𝕻 1 drop of galbanum 5 drops of Ⅎ 3 drops of boswellia carterii incense 1 drop of pink cloud, rose woke volatile, 1 drop of tropical night, trupanact volatile, 2 drops of lime. Could Kushner be Kissinger? Theoretically. And the man that plays Kissinger would have to be stand-in. Could Boris create World War III and what is his connection with Rothschild? Boris Johnson hires Sky's Andrew Griffith as business advisor. The former Rothschild investor banker joined Sky in 1999. Source, Vietcom. How a U.S. nuclear strike actually works. 1,728,509 views. 19 ℘𝐾854c. Mutually assured destruction works in their minds. Takeover is so takeover. The core global total of Jews jumps above 15 million if the highest American estimates are assumed. Wiki/Jewish_population_by_country. Prevent, stall, obstruct, sabotage, contain and end World War III. Iran offers to return to nuclear deal even if US doesn't. The Jerusalem Post 4 hours ago, July 25, 2019. Iran says it will commit to nuclear inspections if US lifts sanctions. Washington Post ART. Review HD streamed, July 19, 2019 at 8:08 a.m. Iran makes substantial nuclear offer in return for US lifting sanctions. We murdered World War III? HD streamed, July 18, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. U.S. sanctions on Iran are deliberately targeting innocent civilians and amount to economic terrorism. HD streamed, July 18, 2019 at 6:31 a.m. Take over or take cover. Make plans to secure the future of humanity. Prevent, stall, obstruct, sabotage, contain and end World War III. 10 phases or 10 stages of genocide. 1. Classification. 2. Symbolization. 3. Discrimination. 4. Dehumanization. 5. Organization. 6. Polarization. 7. Preparation. 8. Persecution. 9. Extermination. 10. Denial. Why are they not using the FEMA camps? Perhaps Walmarts converted into cages are closer to the child sexual abusers than FEMA camps. BBC. Should we boycott automation? Nobody has real privacy. Synthetic telepathy reality. It's the ℍ𝑚. The Goy knows. They build their Merkel. Will Boris Johnson free Tommy Robinson? Above image viewers left wearing a black suit is Boris Johnson with Lord Rothschild, who is one of Mr. Johnson's financial advisors. Immigration and Customs Enforcement space vehicle versus the unmanned space vehicles. It sure is hot today. 34.4 degrees Celsius on the clock in my room. Say I'm no number one. The fact that all lives matter and governments around the world are supposed to protect and serve the global population should outweigh the fact that Black lives matter. You could argue even white lives matter. All lives matter can promote equal rights for all regardless of race, creed or non-religion. What happened in the past does not justify racism against white people. The shocking Jewish role in slavery Part 2, the media cover-up. Michael Chertoff, Ashkenazi Jew, head of Homeland Security. I am the witness. 29K views 11 years ago. Bilderberg. Boris Johnson loves geoengineering. Chemtrails turned on. OFF on #new Prime Minister Day UK. 40 views. Weather modification awareness published on July 23, 2019. Get ready to roll up your sleeve again, y'all. The shot is coming. Secretive Bilderberg meeting draws Pompeo and Kushner. NewYorkTimes.com/2019. Bilderberg. Boris Johnson loves geoengineering. Chemtrails turned on. OFF on #new Prime Minister Day UK. Weather modification awareness. 40 views published on July 23, 2019. Michael Chertoff, Ashkenazi Jew, head of Homeland Security. I am the witness. 29K views 11 years ago. Police called to home of UK leadership hopeful Boris Johnson amid domestic row. timesofisrael.com. June 21, 2019. The Guardian newspaper said neighbors had reported hearing screaming, shouting and banging. A neighbor told The Guardian they heard a woman screaming followed by slamming and banging. At one point Simmons could be heard telling Johnson to get off me and get out of my flat. The story of how the Zionist Jews deceived the Americans and paid the British to occupy Palestine. Sebtube. 274 views 9 years ago. Prevent, stall, obstruct, sabotage, contain and end World War III. Meet a cleaver and they're on their way. Israel. Iran foreign minister accuses U.S. Bolton of plotting for war. Reuters. Bolton. Plan B is already being implemented with Iran. Iranian MFA. B team, Bolton, Benjamin, bin Salman and bin Zayed pushing U.S. to war. SarahCarter.com. April 27, 2019. Zarif blamed what he called the B team, U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates President Mohammed bin Zayed, for stirring up trouble for Iran in the region and for pushing the U.S. toward disaster in spite of Trump's campaign promise not to get involved in expensive foreign wars. B team or NBC team? Nuclear biological chemical filter, possibly required for surviving the B team. BB team prepared. Being for diversity is being for a Muslim caliphate. Because Muslims have the highest birth rate, it is only a question of time. What is going on? Israeli settler violence, Jewish religious terrorism and Zionist political violence also exist according to Wiki.
So basically, other people have to procreate faster if they want to match the birth rate of the Muslim people. So how about it, baby?
Zionist political violence refers to acts of violence or terror committed by Zionists. At a congressional hearing in May, the head of the FBI's counterterrorism division testified that the Bureau was investigating 850 domestic terrorism cases and that of those, about 40% involved racially motivated violent extremists. Most in that group, he said, were white supremacists. Washington Post. Exposed in Dutch, bloed gesteld, ontmaskerd. 10 times Trump may have obstructed justice, according to ℎ𝐼𝑔𝖗𝑑𝑒. Narcissism is the pursuit of gratification from vanity or egotistic admiration of one's idealized self-image and attributes. Vanity is the excessive belief in one's own abilities or attractiveness to others. Shanna Grice, police officer insists murdered woman wasted his time and defends decision to fine her. Shanna Grice reported Michael Lane to police 5 times in 6 months but was fined £90 for wasting police time before later being killed. A bomb, a nation, abomination. Tulsi Gabbard is the only presidential candidate defending freedom of speech and the American right to our First Amendment. If there are synthetic perfumes in an eau de toilette, it should be listed among the ingredients that it contains a synthetic smell. In Norway, all prisoners have access to the internet in their cells. Implication.net, Alent News at Alent News. IRGC Quds Force Commander, Qasem Soleimani, reportedly visited the Abu Kamal border crossing between Iraq and Syria and T4 airbase in Syria recently. He told Iran-backed Shia militias at these locations to be ready for possible impending war with America. He confirmed that the Assad government would be working with them in the event of any war. Dr. Mohammad Javad Zarif has been foreign minister of Iran since 2013. Lyrebird can clone anyone's voice in 60 seconds. TechSpot. U.S. extends waivers for countries to continue civil nuclear work with Iran. CNN January 8, 2019. Iranian FM Zarif joins in death to US, UK, Israel chant Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, who John Kerry, EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini, senior British and French diplomats, and leading New York Times and BBC journalists, are constantly trying to persuade us is a moderate, was caught on tape on Thursday joining a crowd in a chant calling for the destruction of the US, UK and Israel. The chant broke out after a speech delivered in Tehran by Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, while the crowd chants death to America, death to Britain and death to Israel. Zarif mouths the genocidal words shouted by the fanatical audience. Also on YouTube here, https://www.youtube.com/watch. V = OSCE test 4, Tom Gross. Moderate Iranian FM Zarif caught chanting death to US, UK, Israel. 6,698 views. Tom Gross published on May 27, 2018. Watch. Iranian FM Zarif chants death to America, death to Britain, death to Israel. By the Tower.org staff, May 29, 2018. Tulsi Gabbard praised for pummeling Kamala Harris record. Jailed 1,500 people for weed and laughed about it. Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record, Gabbard said. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. Podcast 6 Epstein races to silence victims before police can find them. 23,605 views. Blackstone Intelligence Network published on July 19, 2019. Geoengineering, also called climate engineering, is 100% proven beyond any reasonable doubt by cancer chemtrails. Project Cloverleaf, the cloud seeding patents. Because people lie and pretend chemtrails are contrails, we know the government is lying to us and therefore criminal. This only confirms the governments around the world are infiltrated and involved in population reduction, remote torture and illegally spying on civilians. Geoengineering is done to create global warming for the eco-tax money scam of the NASA Freemasons who pretend the opposite is true. Satanic/Luciferian inversion. Jesuits and Masons are in on it, population reduction and the global warming hoax, but civilians cannot do anything about it because of the remote torture weapons, synthetic telepathy and the fact that Jesuits and Masons have hijacked governments around the world with this technology. We believe in YT. New York Times, we believe nobody, we're alright. Psychic predicts start of WW3 and end of Zionist state. Black Bodhisattva 2.6 gave views 3 years ago. 666 in every EAN and UPCA barcode. The basic double black bar pattern for the number 6 is present in every UPC exactly 3 times. To say this a little differently, every retail product is now being marked with a barcode that visually appears to contain the number 666. Antimestrath.com. I checked a barcode of 2 products I bought, Echo Nutmeg and Tobacco, and they both had the 666 in the barcode at the beginning, middle and end. Imagine that. The first thing a scanner looks for when reading a retail barcode is the number 666. Only after finding this number can it go on to read the rest of the code. There is a somewhat rare shorter version of retail barcode that is basically half the length of the usual barcode. In these codes, 2 6s are always together on the right end of the code in a 111111 sequence. This sequence always starts with a white bar so it ends in black. Now take a look at as many UPC barcodes as you like, and every time, you will see the 666 hidden in it.